Welcome to episode 330 of CppCast, the first podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm all right, Rob. How are you doing?
Doing all right. You surviving the holidays?
Yes, I am. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Had a good Christmas. We're recording this just 2 days after Christmas.
Yes.
Looking forward to New Year's. Yeah.
Did you get any geeky fun toys? Like, I don't know, let's say the ultimate Millennium Falcon Lego kit or something like that?
No, I did not
That's like
get
a
anything
$600
like that.
kit, right?
No, yeah, those Legos are always really cool. My kids are still very into Legos, but I haven't gotten anything like that for myself. Yeah. How about you?
My wife got me, it's something that I had asked for, but it's from Adafruit, I think. And it's a macro pad that you build yourself. So it's got a 3x4 keypad on it.
Nice.
And you have to solder all the components on it, whatever. But then it's like programmable, so then I can make some macro keys, which I kind of wanted it for shortcuts for video editing for my channel. And so she got me that. So now I have a project to build, which I'll strongly consider making an episode out of actually building it and programming it for the first time, because that sounds like fun.
Yeah, that's cool. We did get a projector and a screen for it, so we can watch movies outside. And even though it's December, we're having like 60, 70 degree weather right now, so
It's
looking
stupid.
forward to that. It is, but it's North Carolina.
Yeah, it rained in Colorado a couple days ago, and it's not supposed to do that. Anytime, like you're talking November 1st on, if it rains, something's weird is happening. We're at the end of December. It's like winter. Well, winter, I guess, only technically started a few days ago or whatever, right on the solstice. But still, it's not right.
Silly. All right. Well, at the top of every episode, I like to read a piece of feedback. We got this YouTube comment on the episode we did a couple months ago with Bob Nystrom. This is Homero saying, I stumbled across this channel episode while doing a search on Bob Nystrom's Crafting Interpreters book. Great stuff. And I'm now a subscribed member. So yeah, welcome to the show, Homero. Hopefully you like some of the episodes as well.
Was that only 13 weeks ago for real?
I guess so. Yeah.
Man, that feels like that had to have been last year with like, I don't know. It's been a crazy end of the year.
Definitely has been. Okay. We love to hear your thoughts about the show. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe on YouTube. So just us today. Gonna do a bit of a news episode. I think we did the same thing last year at the end of
Probably
2020. Yeah.
And so this is where you have to give your full bio as if you're the guest, right?
Oh, no, I'm not prepared to do that. Should probably update our bios on the website at some point, though.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Whenever this kind of thing comes up, my bio that I have in like conferences is pretty much the same one from 6 years ago, because it's so much easier to copy and paste
it around. Yeah.
You're just like, done.
Okay, so we got a bunch of articles to talk about. This first one, I feel like we may have mentioned this. It's a part 2 post for a new C++ logging library, and it did ring a bell. I think we mentioned it when the author of this library first announced he was working on it and kind of soliciting feedback. And I do want to wonder, though, before we start talking about this library, since it's a logging library, do we want to mention Log4j real quick? Because that's been all over the news the past 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been on like my to-do list for like 3 weeks to actually like understand what the Log4j hoopla was about. Yeah, I didn't pay attention at all. I'm just terrible about that.
I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, but I tried to at least understand like what the vulnerability was. And I really don't, I still don't understand why this feature was part of a logging library to do this remote code execution thing. But, why would you need to do that? I don't know.
Don't you always have executable logging statements.
And it could just be anything, like any log message, if it was crafted the right way, could turn into remote code being executed, right?
I don't
That's
know.
my understanding.
That's kind of awesome in a terrible way.
In a very terrible way.
Well, did you notice the very first top-rated comment on this Reddit post was very nice, but does it also support our remote arbitrary code execution?
Yeah, so it's hard not to comment on that with this in the comments. Yeah.
That was like the main reason I wanted to cover this in the news was so that we could at least talk about the joke.
Now, obviously, I feel for any of our listeners who were affected by this, because I do know, like, at least that first weekend when Log4j was announced, there were people like spending their entire weekend trying to, fix their servers and everything by, upgrading Log4j or taking it out or disabling settings, things like that. So I feel for those people who got affected by it. Hopefully, our community was not heavily affected by it, though.
I would assume less so.
Yeah, I would assume less so.
But now I have ideas for like my next puzzle book. Like maybe somehow it would be like a logging system that you actually program with the log statements, and then you have to figure out what would. Maybe it's a little too timely or something.
Maybe. I'm hoping we can all forget about this. I do know that I think they've already released like 3 updates because like the first 2 patches didn't quite resolve the vulnerability. So hopefully it's all better now. But
right.
Okay, well, let's talk about the actual logging library.
Yes.
This is on Christian Panav's GitHub, and it's called LWLog.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a really nice README talking about setting up and using the logging library. And his benchmarks are really impressive. He's comparing it to SpeedLog.
It's like 100 times faster than SpeedLog in some cases.
It's like 100 times faster than SpeedLog. It can be both synchronous or asynchronous.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how he got some of this speed. And I think he's doing things like only parsing the like formatting of the logging statement once and then keeping that in memory. So you don't need to re-parse it every time that particular log statement gets called up, right?
That sounds familiar, yeah. I was kind of struck by the fact that it doesn't. So for like you're saying, Rob, you have to do like a set pattern, and you can set up like permanent variables that are in the pattern, but it's not nearly as flexible as SpeedLog, which uses lib format underneath. Sure. Yeah. So if your goal is raw speed, but someone did comment on the Reddit discussion, I think, about how it does its own layer of buffering, which is one way that it got speed as well.
Right.
Which, depending on how much like predictability and knowing exactly like when these log statements are being written you need, that might stop you from using it as well. But what's the comment here? Manual buffering, parse the pattern. Let's see, using a massive buffer on stood out and buffering in memory until the destructor for file writes means that you can't tail a log file from a running process or diagnose an early or abnormal exit. Yes, so that's a limitation that our listeners might be interested in.
And I think you can force it to write out to the log file if you don't want to rely on this or if you're worried about crashing. But yeah, that is something to be aware of.
But the author of this project is doing a great job of like posting this on Reddit and then actually reading and responding to the Reddit comments and then going back and updating the README, because you started by saying that the README is like outstanding, and that's part of why he keeps going back and doing these updates.
Yeah, but it certainly seems like it's a very impressive library. Certainly worth checking out. Maybe if you want something that is potentially even faster than SpeedLog. Yeah. Does not support remote arbitrary code execution though. So if you need that, go switch to Java, I guess.
Someone should add a pull request enabling mode arbitrage.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing we have is, do vectors get more use than what my textbook implies? And yeah, there's another Reddit post where someone is saying they were, in their university class learning C++, and it's, briefly mentioning vectors, but just focusing on arrays. And yeah, the author of this post is kind of asking, like, is this right, or are vectors more used, or is everyone using arrays? And yeah, we're definitely using vectors.
We're using vectors.
Yeah.
I wanted to discuss this a little bit because I'm curious. I don't own the book. I'm curious how the author presents it, because the author of the Reddit post says arrays, arrays, arrays. Oh, look, vectors. But look, arrays, arrays, and keeps going back to arrays. Now, if the author of the book is saying, if you know the fixed size of your data, then use a C++ standard array, and prefer array over vector, and trying to educate people in that direction, then I'm on board with this.
Sure.
At least the Reddit post didn't say, hey, the author of the book is telling me to use list everywhere, because that would be a real problem.
Right.
And someone comments on the Reddit post that arrays don't participate with RAII, which is just wrong. Yeah, it says C arrays don't have that. A regular C array, a stack-based C array, is going to construct everything in the order you expect it to, destruct everything in the order you expect it to, which reminds me I need to put a to-do list to put this in my next puzzle book. I think I've written that down.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how they're teaching things in university. I would be curious as to what exactly the book is presenting.
I just tried to look it up, and I feel like, I totally should have looked this up before. This author, Tony Gaddis, I believe is right, okay, has a confusing array of books, I should say. There's textbooks on C++, Java, Python, C#, all from the same author, which...
is he doing lots of, like, intro to different languages?
C++, from control structures to objects. Python, starting out with Python, starting out with Java, starting out with Alice. I don't even know Alice at all.
No, I don't know what that is.
And then in generic programming and logic design with data structures kinds of books. Yeah, it mostly seems to be starting out with kind of topics.
Yeah.
Curious.
Well, it does look like the author of this post, though, is getting pointed in the right way. That, yeah, vector is definitely used a lot within the C++ programming community. Yeah.
Right. I just thought about the fact, I was thinking deeper about the comment that the one post at Redditor posted saying that C arrays don't play nicely with RAII. And there is the caveat that if you try to return an array from a function or pass an array to a function, a C array, then you just get to decayed a pointer and everything goes to crap.
Right, right.
So that is worth at least mentioning so that we don't get a bunch of comments saying, hey, Jason forgot this, part.
Yeah. Okay, next thing we have is a post on UC Paknin's blog. This is this year received the gift of a free Nissan manual, and I think we had him on like 2 years ago when he first came out with a Nissan manual. Certainly, if you're using a Nissan build system, it would be a good thing to read through. But apparently, he made it available for purchase for like a year, and eventually decided to shut it down because he wasn't getting a whole lot of sales. And he's now making the book free. So if you, like I said, have any interest in Nissan, definitely go check it out, and you can just go ahead and get the PDF now.
It's an interesting comment from him too, that in the interest of fairness, he didn't make the book immediately available for free because he didn't want to feel like all the people who paid for it had lost something. My interaction with this community, most people who are paying for your book are doing it simply because they want to support the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and there's actually people.
Feel bad about it.
Yeah, and there's actually people in the comments here, where he announced the book is free now, saying, what if I still want to support you?
Right. How do I pay you still?
Right. So hopefully he does, put out a good way for people to support him, because, yeah, if you're using Nissan, I'm sure you would want to support him. He's putting a lot of work into it.
Yeah, the community surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly, but is very generous in a lot of ways in these ways.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing, it's a post from the Visual C++ blog. Microsoft Visual Studio 2022 and floating point to integer conversions. A lot of,
Did you follow this, just for the record?
I had not heard of this. I don't think I'm, too concerned with these changes, but apparently they did change the way floating point to integer conversions works, and they're introducing some flags if you want to go back to the old behavior that was present in Visual Studio 2017, but they're explaining, what's different, how it's now, more standards conformant. Yeah.
I definitely got lost in the weeds on this one. I'm but there's no specific examples of previously this number would have truncated to this number and now it truncates to this number. I wanted a chart in here or something.
that would be useful, but I think what they're saying is the old default was to just, like you said, truncate, round down to the nearest whole number, and the new thing is saturating conversions. Is that right? That's the way it works now, I think, from reading this post. And
the main thing that I got out of it is that they're using they're going to what Intel says should be the standard. Is that how you read that too? Because they're using Intel's built-in functions, built-in instructions for this now.
Right, but it is also based on what ISO says you should do with floating point integer conversions.
Okay.
But I think the older versions of Visual Studio, older Visual C++, prior to that being standardized, just chose what they would do with a floating point integer, and then the standards had something different. So they're now fully aligned with that.
And it's what I got specifically floating point to unsigned. I knew there was a little detail in here that I'd forgotten. Floating point to signed has always been standards conformant. That is not changing. Okay,
right. And just the main things that are actually changing is if you're doing NaN conversion to int, or if it's a large floating point number larger than the size of the int you're using. That's where things could potentially be different, I think.
Okay, right. If it's a number that's not representable, then they said that they go to max int.
Right, so max or min int, and if it's NaN, I think they say it goes to 0.
Okay, so it goes to that's what it was. It goes to the closest value that it could be.
Yeah.
Instead of just a bitwise truncate.
Yeah, and I guess the main thing is if you were, relying on a certain behavior with your floating point integer conversions, there are functions that you can use to get the exact behavior you want. Yeah, it's either saturating or sentinel conversion. So if you want to use the old style, you can still use these to go from float to integers. Yeah. Okay.
But fortunately, all of our listeners are following best practices and support multiple compilers anyhow. So if this was going to be a problem for them, they would have already discovered it. Right.
It certainly would be the best way to go to build on multiple architectures, multiple compilers. Yeah. I really can't. I'm curious as to who this might be affecting.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone relies on broken behavior somewhere. Yeah. The story I'm constantly reminded of is, checking to see if this is null has always been undefined behavior. But when GCC with GCC 4.2 or something made it in like -02 or '03. They started actually removing checks for this to be null as an optimization pass. The optimization pass had always been there. It just wasn't enabled unless you asked for it before. When they made that change, they got all kinds of projects like Qt and all these projects that are like, you broke our code. They're like, no, your code was always broken.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing we have is a post from PBS Studio, and this is top 10 bugs found in C++ projects in 2021. And I don't know, I read through all of these, and they're all, very interesting bugs that PBS Studio was able to find. Do you want to go through them all? What do you want to do?
I think we could do a pick and choose personally.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite?
I'm not sure if I have a favorite. Oh, I guess the 9th one was interesting just because I was kind of surprised that they did that. The 9th bug is finding that the HTML DOM being constructed from some C++ code looked like it was wrong.
Mismatched string literals.
Yeah, mismatched string literals. So they're constructing some HTML with the UL tag, which I think they say is a list. I don't know HTML.
Unordered list is UL, yeah.
Okay. So in the code, they're saying, they have the UL open, and then at the end of the string, they're doing another UL open followed by, body end and HTML end, and that's mismatched. You have two UL open tags and no closing tags, and they were able to find that, which I just thought was interesting that they do, looking at HTML DOM errors. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That one struck me also. I didn't really closely read the actual code on this one until just now. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. And it looks like it was actually a bug found in CppCast.
CppCast, I'm not familiar with that.
That's part of Qt.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not familiar with it either, but Qt's huge. It's like, are you familiar with all of Boost?
Right.
No one is.
What are some other ones that were worth mentioning here?
Intermodular analysis and lost memset.
Lost memset. What is
This
this?
item is the 5th item.
Okay.
So it's a well-known issue if you deal with code that has to have any kind of level of security, that if you do a memset of a block of memory to 0, the compiler has the tendency to remove that memset because if it can prove that you don't later read back that memory, then it considers it a dead store and it removes it. And so there's secure versions of memset to make sure that it actually does this right. Well, you may have been relying on the fact that your memset was in a different translation unit hidden inside of a CVP file. So the compiler, when it did all of its inlining and optimization passes and whatever, it had no way to know whether or not that memset was a dead store. So it would still call a dead set. Now, today, you've said, wait a minute, I'm going to enable whole program optimization in Visual Studio or link time optimization in GCC or Clang. And now the compiler can see across translation units, can now see that memset inlined and say, wait, that's a dead store. And now it removes your memset because you enabled another level of whole program optimization. Okay. PBS Studio can detect that and alert on it.
Nice.
Which I'm pretty impressed by that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Where's some other ones here? The date processing one was interesting. Just a function here to go from a short month name to an integer, and the function returns -1 if you don't have a matching short month name. But the code calling this function was looking for or expecting an error code of 0 instead of -1, and that was caught. That's certainly very useful.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's cool. Does look like a tool that just keeps growing and.
Yeah.
Are they currently a sponsor?
They certainly have been for a while.
They
yeah.
have been.
And this first one I really like too, where you're iterating over a for loop and then there's a nested for loop within it that's incrementing I again, or you would want to be incrementing, it's R in this case, but incrementing like the J on the inner for loop, something like that.
Yeah, that one's definitely interesting also. I'm kind of curious how many tools can catch that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else you want to highlight in here?
No, I don't think so. There's a ton of them. They're fun.
Yeah, they're always fun. Okay. Next, we have another blog post from Visual Studio. This one is Visual Studio Code, the C++ December 2021 update. Basically, the whole of this post is they're adding client ID to the Visual C or the C++ experience for Visual Studio Code, which is really nice having that integrated and easy to use.
I almost, I know I've said this over the years, but every time we get an article like this on VS Code, my kind of gut reaction is like what is the end goal here? Because VS Code is becoming like almost a Visual Studio replacement in some ways. Yeah.
I mean, I think on Windows, I feel like Microsoft's Visual Studio is always going to be better and more full-featured, but I mean, being able to go between the different platforms in the same IDE, or if you're using GCC or Clang, like it's certainly, they're putting a lot of work into it. And now I don't think we mentioned this, but now you can like run Visual Studio Code in the browser. You don't even have to install it anymore.
Inside of GitHub, I think we might have covered it once. It's like a keyboard shortcut of like hitting Shift 3 times. I don't know. I forget what it is or something, and it pops up VS Code in the middle of your project right there.
It's pretty cool.
It's not Shift 3 times. I forget what it is. It's something like that. I was just going to say, from the standpoint of our listeners, I use VS Code for something completely different than probably almost everyone else does. But I find that it is like a great markdown editing IDE, because you can have the live preview on the side. And if you just need to double check that your markdown makes sense, it's great.
I mean, that I use it for editing show notes. Yeah. I did not realize it had a markdown preview though. Is that an extension that you put in?
There's one built in, and there's a couple of extension ones. I have two set up. I think I keep falling back to using the built-in default one.
Nice.
You have to click a button and say like open preview pane, and then you've got like, you can have your files on the left or whatever, and then the thing you're editing in the middle and the preview on the right. And it's pretty good. It doesn't support like all markdown flavors or anything, but as long as you're used to the fact that markdown's got different flavors, and okay, well, I don't expect the image embed to work here the same way that it's going to work, whatever, But I have a couple of gists on GitHub, and I'll just check them out and edit them live sometimes there instead of on GitHub. I think it works pretty cool.
Nice.
That's actually how I gave my presentation for
at CppCon.
Was that the one? Was it that one?
I don't know. You tell me, man.
Yes, it was the CppCon one. Yeah. So the first half, that talk still hasn't gone live. The first half was not using that. And then the second half of the talk, I just switch over to VS Code, and I'm just scrolling through a very long document, because I kind of like reached this point over COVID where I just kind of got tired of making slides. I'm like, well, if I'm going to talk and it's going to be a weird remote talk anyhow, I may as well do something weird and experimental. So I like almost just don't use slides anymore. Now I just have like a giant markdown document. I scroll through it. Then my code samples can be as big or as small as I want them to be. And there's no like arbitrary distinction of things. It's just a continuous flow of a conversation through the document. I think it's worked okay. I haven't gotten any specific comments or feedback from anyone on it. Combats.
Combat.
Should post it to Reddit, see if I can get some combats from it.
Is your talk still not on YouTube? Because I thought they posted it was like up to 140 some talks were now available on YouTube from
I
CppCon.
don't know. Maybe we should look real quick. As long as we have everyone here.
Yeah.
Last time I looked, I didn't see it up there because they're still doing the slow release of them.
Right. It might still be unlisted, but you can find the playlist if you go to that JetBrains page, which we put in our show notes a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Is that when we were talking with Kate and Guy? No, before that.
Oh, there is a lot up now.
Yeah.
I really hope it got recorded because I liked that talk and I don't want to give it again.
I'm sure it will get there. Okay, I just found it. Yeah, 140 talks up here now. I would think yours is up here. We're up to 140.
But you said it might be one of the unlisted ones still?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the unlisted playlist, but it's up to 140 talks. Is there a way to search this?
Control F.
Here you go. Yeah, it's here. Your new mental
Oh,
model
that's
of
good.
expert.
It's my.
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to go with second best talk. I think it's my
Yeah.
second best talk. Yeah.
What do you
It won't
consider
have as much
your best talk?
impact as. What's that?
What do you consider your best talk?
The best talk was definitely Rich Code for Tiny Computers, the Commodore 64 one. And then the second best talk previously would have been the context for all the things that it has done.
Right.
Not necessarily because I mean, it was a good talk, but I consider it the second best talk because of the impact that it had on the community and how many times it got cited and like committee papers and that kind of thing. And that was pretty cool. This talk, I think, is more entertaining and educational, more like the Rich Code one.
Well, I will put a link to the talk in the show notes since we do have it on this playlist.
All right, cool.
Okay. Next thing we have is another GitHub repo, and this is an IMGUI command palette. You've done some work with IMGUI, right?
I have, yes.
Okay.
And so this struck me as interesting. It's been a little while since I've used it. But yeah, I mean, it's a command palette like you get in VS Code or whatever, where you like hit a hotkey and type things in and it'll show you all the possible commands. It looks like it's pretty easy to plug in. It got a bunch of good comments from the Reddit community when it was announced.
So this is something, if you're writing a program using IMGUI where it would help you, as you're going along, that's the idea?
Yeah, think of it like a widget in Qt or something like that. Yeah. Well, yes, let's just go with that. It's not something that would be an individual component, in a window. It is its own window. So more like a file dialog or something like that.
Okay. Very cool. Okay, next thing, we have another post on Reddit. This is a brand new C++ 20 serialization library, single header. It's called zppbits. You want to tell us about this one?
Yeah, this one's interesting because you only have to add like one statement to your struct and say like, this is how many elements I have. Let's see what it looks like.
Right, you just have a serialized method that you add, right?
Not even a method. It's just a using declaration.
Okay.
So you say, I have two members that need to be serialized. And then it uses, I can visualize internally that it uses trickery with structured bindings to get all of those members back out. And then, so it's going to give you a blob of data. Everything that's in there has to be POD, basically. But you can serialize and deserialize and access individual members and that kind of thing. And I just serialize and deserialize. So it's super straightforward. And it's the kind of thing I've like experimented with. And so it's fun anyhow. but it's really lightweight. It doesn't have all the features. Like all the Redditors are like, oh, but it's missing like versioning. And what happens if I want to add an element? And the author's like, no. This is fast and simple.
Yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of if you're concerned with changing your data structures. It might not support good backward forward compatibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, we got a SeaLion bug fix update on the JetBrains blog. So a bunch of bug fixes in here, and they're announcing their roadmap for 2022. And it looks like they're kind of focusing the whole release of the first release of 2022 will be targeting bug fixes and performance improvements and things like that, which is nice to instead of always just trying to add new features, making sure everything is working well.
Yes. I totally forgot to read this one.
Okay. You're the SeaLion. You're a SeaLion user though, right?
I am, but I never got back to this. I don't know. Somehow I missed this news item for the discussion, but that is great because I am really looking forward to some of these things. Like, C++ language support Clang D integration and code analysis. I complained about this when we had Kate and Guy on, I think, about how the fact that they use Clang D, which obviously use it because it's so easy to use, is actually holding back SeaLion right now because it's missing so many C++ 20 features. Right. And that is a problem for my code. I actually ended up splitting my code up a little bit more modularly so that the code that Clang D doesn't like is like in its own file. So I can use the IDE. But some of these things like high CPU usage from unit test detection and some of these things, sometimes you feel it. Sometimes the project does not have to be very big and you're just sitting there going, okay, IDE, it's time for you to start putting the squiggles in because I've only got a 1,000-line project here.
So sort of be nice when this next release comes out with hopefully all of these bugs and performance improvements addressed.
Yeah. I'm curious, will be addressed in 2022.1. So I'm going to start badgering them on January 1st. Where's this release?
And I should note, they did say they're not like explicitly committing to addressing every single one, but this is what they're targeting with this first release, is all these bug fixes and performance improvements. Yeah.
So for our long-time listeners here, Victor Chura, who we've had him on, and he's given a bunch of talks about Clang Power Tools for Visual Studio, the plugin, right? Victor has said this in his talks, that he got permission from the company to take like a year to stop adding features and to do code modernization and cleanup and bug fixes. I mean, that is just huge and so necessary. How old does a project have to be before it starts carrying baggage from dead code and poor design decisions? You're like, if I could have done this over in C++ 17, I would have done this. I'm guessing a project doesn't have to be more than about 3 years old before you're like, oh, I can't believe we wrote it like that. Right. So you can just imagine something as complicated as an IDE. I think we're all on board. Don't add any more features. Take as much time as you need to do whatever fixes you want to do.
Yeah, make it right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last thing we have is an announcement for C++ on C 2022. It will be in person next year. It's like July 4th to 7th is obviously it's the plan.
It's the plan. Everything should be like with a giant asterisk. This is the plan.
Yeah. But that's great that they're having it. I think this is the same location where they had it in person the first time. Lee's Cliff Hall, I believe that's the same spot.
That should be right. I didn't double check. I probably should have.
And you're in this post because you, as well as Hannah and Kevlin Henney, are going to be keynoting it.
Yes, it will be the three of us keynoting it. And yes, that's the same location where it was previously. I just felt like I should double check. Yeah,
cool.
so that should be fun. I'm looking forward to going back to that one. My talk last time didn't get properly recorded. So there's no actual evidence that I was there previously. And
well,
if you
there's
notice,
a picture of you on the top of this post, but that
yeah,
talk
but
was
did
not
you
recorded.
look closely at this picture of the top of the post?
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
Okay, who's in focus?
Not you. Yeah, there's a
Not
column
me.
in focus.
The column is in focus.
Yeah.
There's almost no evidence that I was there.
That's funny. Well, hopefully no technical difficulties this year, and hopefully you're all able to go in person. Hopefully things are safe in mid 2022.
Mid 2022.
Yeah.
And you know what? I bet I still will not have a flying car in 2022.
Probably not. Probably not. I mean, it's the future. It's not future enough yet.
Yeah. And you know, when I bring this up, there's always the person that's like, we have flying cars. They're called helicopters. And I would like to say, no, that is
It's
false.
not the same.
I have flown remote controlled helicopters. Those are flying lawnmowers. They are not flying cars.
Yeah. Yeah. We want flying cars from like Blade Runner. That's what
Yes.
we want. Well, with this last post talking about, you know, a conference in 2022, I guess we should maybe just comment on the year ahead. I know we kind of did that at the end of last year's episode at this time, where we were all really ready to say goodbye to 2020, looking forward to 2021. I think we knew vaccines were coming. Mm-hmm. Obviously, 2021 was still a bit of a roller coaster, and it looks like that might be continuing into 2022.
And if I have the opportunity to encourage people, although I get the impression that probably most of our listeners are already vaccinated, go ahead and get on the list and get vaccinated. They are safe.
Yeah.
Get your vaccine. You're not going to lose your sense of taste or smell from a vaccine. Yeah.
Omicron, you know, I think I've read that Moderna and Pfizer are doing well protecting people against this new Omicron variant. Yeah. If you've gotten the J&J vaccine, maybe get a booster of Pfizer or Moderna.
Or even just get another J&J. Stick with whatever you're comfortable with. I don't care.
Yeah. But protect yourself. I'd really, really like this thing to end at some point.
Yeah, we're still waiting to say goodbye to 2020, huh?
Yeah, it's the year that will never end. Hopefully it's not a whole decade of it.
Yeah. Well, and have we actually mentioned that the call for papers for C++ now is out also? That is planned to be in person in June.
That's in June, okay.
In May.
That seems right.
In Aspen. And C++ North, which did get discussed with Kate on, is supposed to be in person in Toronto at the end of July, middle July. The question currently in my head is, do I fly from Folkestone to Toronto to try to go to C++ North, or do I come home first, or do I skip C++ North? I'm not sure yet. I've been wanting to go because, I haven't been to Canada yet.
I have not been to Canada either. I'm sure it's lovely in July. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's a giant country too, right? So have to appreciate that if I've been to Toronto, I have not been to Canada. I've been to Canada, but I haven't seen Canada.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to comment on before we end our last episode of 2021?
Nothing that I can think of.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back. New episode first week of January. Got an interview lined up, so we'll see you all in 2022. Have a happy New Year.
Yep.
Bye, Jason.
Bye.